Yes, we have a first up on our program. We have a short infomercial from CRC, Cumberland River Compact, one of our many amazing sponsors that we are so grateful for. Mikhail, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. If possible, I'd love to share my screen. Is that
Yes,
possible?
I got you.
Okay. Okay. So, good morning. It's nice to see you all. It's been such a crazy year. We definitely miss having you all in our space for these meetings, but wow, it looks like you guys have adapted. I really liked the music. That made me feel so calm this morning. When Diane called, the compact is an in-kind sponsor to TWIG through the use of our meeting space, which you all didn't use, but you still left us on last year, but you still counted us as a sponsor. So we really appreciate that. And we're really proud to sponsor TWIG. And I think I was one that marked more than 10 meetings, and I can't even remember my first meeting. I remember first hearing about it from Laurel Creech and Ann Davis and Tiffany Wilmot. So way back in the day when they started it, maybe the first meetings were at Whole Foods in Green
Exactly.
Hills. Yeah. So anyway, when Diane called and offered us these couple of infomercials before, a couple of minutes of an infomercial before Dorie's talk, I thought, I was actually out at a flood buyout property on Monday morning. We had a staff meeting and we divided up all of our projects to go see how they had fared through the rain and the flooding. So I was at a flood buyout project, and it was really such good news. I thought that I wanted to share with you all what the flood buyout program is. So this isn't really a Cumberland River Compact infomercial. It's just more on the info, less on the commercial. So this is the 2010 flood. I mean, I'm going to talk about the 2010 flood. This is Pennington Bend. And you all probably heard a lot about Pennington Bend. Right down here is Opry Mills. This is a neighborhood. So, you know, all of these little lot lines represent houses. So, let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so now this is a map off Metro GIS, the same area. The red represents homes that sustained severe damage during the flood. So, you know, there's a lot of discussion about flooding on the Cumberland River during 2010 and whether the discharges from the dams were poorly managed. But you can see that the water sort of washed in here and flowed, you know, that way. And the neighborhood sustained a lot of damage. So this is actually what it looked like. This is the inundation map off Metro GIS. In the open space plan for Nashville that it was created prior to this with the Land Trust for Tennessee and the Conservation Fund and Mayor Carl Dean. They talked about leaving a lot of these bends in the river. So the river is flowing this way. And they talked about leaving a lot of the bends as natural space. So whenever you start hearing talks about Bell's Bend being developed, this is what should come to your mind. And this is why we should leave Bell's Bend undeveloped, because these areas naturally flood. Okay, so these are all the homes that sustained damage. Nashville had had a flood buyout program that began in early 2000s, late 1990s. And they got really aggressive about the flood buyout program in after the 2010 flood. And you can see here is Pennington Bend, and the layers on this map don't align directly, but you can see that all of these homes along the bend were purchased as a flood buyout property. So what that means is that these homes have, they're called repetitive loss structures. So they flood frequently enough that it's more financially beneficial for the city to partner with FEMA and buy these homes. And so you can see this is a close-up of Pennington Bend, and this would have been a home that was, you know, eligible for buyout, but they declined to buy out. They declined the buyout. And then these are lots that agreed to be bought out. So the city, with some federal money, buys the home and tears the home down, and then restores the green infrastructure, the buffer on these properties, so that it provides the ecological function that that is supposed to be there, and you know, in these floodplain areas. So we partner with the city. The Cumberland River Compact partners with the city to take these sort of leveled lots and replant them. So the way that we replant them is we go to the back of the house line, and we draw a line from the back of one house to the back of another. And then all of that area is what we replant with trees. And so, so you're restoring sort of a natural function and removing anything that could be damaged. This is what it looks like. You know, it's not super glamorous. It's just a bunch of young trees that, you know, they're soaking up the water. They are resilient in the face of flood. So when Diane called me on Tuesday, I was out at a site like this in the Mill Creek watershed, and it was amazing. You know, there was debris way up here high in the trees. So you knew that the water was actually this high, and it was flowing because the debris was caught in the trees, but there was no destruction. You know, the land was functioning as it should be functioning. So Nashville's flood buyout program is one of the most well-funded in the country. The city is really behind the program. It's a really good example of, you know, we made some mistakes in developing our city in the 50s. We realized those mistakes, and now we're correcting those mistakes. So this is the New York Times did an article in 2019 on the flood buyouts, and it you know, drawing attention to the kind of the singularity of our flood buyout program, and the psychological burden, I think, of having, and if you all flooded over the weekend, you know, the psychological burden of fearing the rain and fearing the high waters and the flood really takes its toll on people. So I think most people welcome this flood buyout program and are happy to kind of sell to the city a house that they couldn't really sell. So since the beginning of this program, the city has purchased 400 homes, leveled the homes, and restored that land to its natural function. So you'll find these spots all over the city. It's usually in a cluster of like 5, you know, 5 homes on a, you know, in a low-lying area. And I think, you know, I think it's an example of the city implementing some really environmentally progressive policies. When we see parks that are flooded, that's what open space should do. It should serve kind of these multi multi layers of purpose. So it should absorb stormwater so that our neighborhoods don't have to. It should, you know, be open space to play and provide kind of the connectivity for species migration. So Rebecca Ratz, Friends of Shelby Park, did an excellent Instagram post where she showed all the flooding in Shelby Park and said, this is our park doing what it's supposed to do. So hopefully, you know, we hear less less about residential damage from this flood as we continue to move our houses out of the floodplain. So I thought that was really cool, good news story. And I thought you all you have such a heightened awareness of environmental issues, and kind of hopefully complemented Dorie's presentation. So thanks for the time this morning.
Definitely. Thank you, Mikhail, so much for sharing that super interesting program. And if you have any links you want to drop in the chat for people to learn more, please go ahead and put those there. All right. Now we are on to our main program speaker, Dorie Bolze. Welcome, Dorie.
Hey, and Mikhail, that was awesome, because I was going to touch on it, but I didn't have the maps. So thank
perfect.
you. She's
Perfect
right. It's a great compliment. And I was talking to, I'm going to share my screen once I figure out how to do it. And it was like, we were talking about the flood yesterday. So I went and made some slides last night and got some data, because I know that that's sort of top of mind right now for folks. All right, hold on a second while I figure out where. Okay, well, this will work.
And I'll just
you have this happen where your computer screen's got way too much stuff on it, you know? So now I got to minimize you all as much as I want to see your all's faces. If y'all wouldn't mind, if you have questions, either throw it in the chat so Jocelyn or someone can read it, because I won't be able to multitask that much, not on a Friday morning. I'll blow it.
I got you, Dorie. I got you.
So yeah, awesome. And so our organization, the Harpeth Conservancy, is 20 years old, actually now 21. We're a science and clean water policy conservation organization. We have a PhD scientist, lawyer on board. As Mikhail, wonderful lead up there. I'll talk a bit about what we've been doing for years on flood management. But I was going to give you a bit of an overview first of the organization. And as Mikhail was saying too, I've probably been up to probably 10 or 15 TWIG meetings over the years, but more at the beginning when it was all starting. You really need the networking. And it's great to see these kind of organizations keep networking, because that's how we all get to know each other and can be effective in public policy. So our vision is clean water and healthy ecosystems for rivers, championed by the people who live here. And that's underlined because a lot of what we do is try and help folks, whether they are elected officials, government officials, retirees, kids, be effective in decision-making that affects their property values in their lives. So our organization, being, you know, science-based and with attorneys and clean water policy experts, we do a lot of figuring out what the problems are, but also trying to implement solutions after developing consensus around what that might be. And you'll see we kind of came up with an anagram of rivers, so you can actually get an idea. We do a lot more than what people realize sometimes. If you like worked with us in 2010, you may not realize something else we did in 2007. But you can see R for restoration, I for issues. So we are working on trying to reduce pollution problems, voice. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit, especially with the pandemic, some of the things that have affected the ability for people to be able to participate effectively in public meetings. And also just access, educate, which is a lot of promoting practices that individuals or landowners, government officials can actually do that make a difference. What Mikhail just laid out, a whole bunch of people were involved in, and we really, all of us did a lot to champion Metro's efforts in that buyout program, which as she alluded to, there were times I think it wasn't as popular. People were concerned about the government purchasing their properties. Recreation, we get involved in and have helped to shape recreation. There are more people here. They all want to get out in our rivers. Sometimes they don't know how to be safe, or they're all in the same place. And I'll touch on that in a minute. And then science, which is sort of the core of what we do. We actually do our own research. We're going to become the experts on these fancy computer models for pollution reduction, so that we have the nonprofit community has some expertise in-house, frankly, around the southeastern US. So our 4 core areas: clean water protection, science and restoration. We actually, rural protection and land use. There are not that many organizations that get involved in actual local decision-making on shaping development plans or zoning or regional planning, and community engagement, which is everything from environmental education to, working with community leaders. So this is where some of the questions came from the poll. So y'all now know that the southeastern rivers of the US are the 3rd most biodiverse in the world: fish, mussels, other aquatic biology. Some of y'all know this better than I do, but here's the graphic that will help you get a sense of what's so cool about it. Over here are just a couple of the rivers in the southeast: the Duck, the Clinch, the Conasauga. The Harpeth is just above the Duck here. Here's Nashville. See how small their little drainage areas are, their little watersheds? See so the Duck River has 147 different species of fish. All the way over here, there's the Colorado River Basin, only 35 species of fish. So it's fascinating, this area of the country. It's like opening up, finding an old house and finding an attic with all cool stuff in it. That's kind of what the rivers are around here. And you go up another tributary and you discover another species of snail. Here's some of the variety, because we have to have fun pictures. I don't know if that's a Nashville crayfish, but it's incredible variety, especially in the small fish that live in the little specialty habitats where the water is really shallow. Over 60% of the Tennesseans get their drinking water from surface water. And this is why I sort of threw in the tip a question about, do you know where your water comes from? Unfortunately, 55% of those stream miles that have been assessed by the state do not meet those water quality standards. And this is an increase from 10 years ago. A lot of this is, some of this expansion, unfortunately, and degradation is coming from growth. And I think we all know this now from the pandemic, right? And Nashville's the hottest place to move to in the country, even before this statistic. And for a lot of us involved in regional planning, 1 million people in the next 15 years is a lot of people. Which is why, where do they go? What type of development practices? How do we maintain our farmland for local food production, land for absorbing stormwater, things like that. So here's the graphic so you can get a sense. I threw this in last night. It's the water planet. 70% of the earth is covered in water. That's mostly the ocean. We can't drink the ocean water, though there are definitely abilities to process it to drinking water. It's hyper expensive. Then most of the fresh water is in our ice. So less than 1% is actually what everybody on the planet's actually drinking, using for electricity, all the other uses we use for water. So just a little bit of the skating at the 30,000 foot level, some of the things our organization has done over the last 20 years that you might have heard of. One of the really cool things is the big project on the Harpeth in Franklin. And so if you don't know what a lowhead dam is, and they're all over Tennessee, Michaela has a whole map, American rivers. They're not very tall. They're very low. They were built for mills and all kinds of things. Newsom Mill in the Harpeth is another one. It's now it's been broken through. So the Harpeth is one of the few completely free flowing rivers in all of Tennessee. It's not dammed anywhere. This won a governor's award. It was honored at the national level. This was a huge project with the city of Franklin and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Tennessee Wildlife Fish Resources Agency. Our organization managed the big federal grant. The city of Franklin put in almost the same amount of money. So this structure has now been removed, but it was built because it's very common to build these to pool up the water so you can pull some of it out. In this case, Franklin for drinking water, for a distillery, for a mill, and they're dangerous. When you're actually kayaking or out there floating, you don't see them, people die on them. But what was really cool about this is that it was demonstrating, because the city of Franklin still pulls water right here in the Harpeth, but you just can't tell. And so this whole thing was designed so that it could still be used for drinking water using modern engineering designs. It's safe now for recreation, and fish that are natural to low flowing river systems are now in this area again, and including a rare species of snail darter. So it was a really cool project, and helped, I think, I didn't realize at the time, but I believe it helped to sort of restart a lot of the efforts going on across the state with dam removal, small little lowhead dam removals. A lot of what we do with, and same thing with Cumberland River Compact, and some of us in the river world is work on managing water. So stormwater management. And our organization got a big EPA grant back in 2003. We worked with Franklin and Williamson County. There was informal partnerships with Metro at the time and developers, and all of this effort to basically create a type of local regulation for how you develop, then integrating stormwater requirements into that local governing structure, which is where you see things like retention ponds and things like that, or green roofs and other things coming up to help absorb the water and slow it down. When you pave, the water has nowhere to go. And then you're starting to see retrofits. And Mikhail, and some of y'all, this happens to be one, Tammy, right here in Cool Springs Mall. And if any of you are around from 25 years ago, they took the creek that ran through here, Spencer Creek, and they routed it around the whole parking lot. And that was probably the last of the big projects in this area that got away with doing that. Nowadays, you have to have a stream buffer, and you try as much as you can when you develop to maintain the either historical or redevelop a natural flow channel for the creeks. We've also worked a fair amount in agriculture because ag is a very big land use in the area, and there's money, and there's a lot in different programs. And the effort over the years, there's a whole section of the Harpeth in Eagleville, which is south of Nashville. And there'll be a map in a little bit, but the Harpeth runs northwest. Water does not run south. Water runs downhill. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's south. And around here, it's very confusing because the rivers bend around and look like noodles. So you really kind of need to know the waterways where you live, especially if you're not from here. So there's a whole section of one of the main tributaries, main original creeks of the Harpeth that are now meet water quality standards. And a lot of these practices are fencing, so cattle are not running around and inside the stream areas that allows this. At this point, this has all been revegetated and it's actually wooded now. This picture was about 4 years ago. And the cattle have safe drinking water. I'm sorry, safe drinking water supply. Oops. And my cat's trying to get in, by the way. If you guys have pets, mine's going to show up any minute. I got like 3 dogs and a cat, and the bird's going to show up too. And it's going to be, hopefully it'll stay out of my office. Where did I got out of my presentation mode. There we go. We were talking about the flood this morning, and we'll get to the difference between the one we just experienced in 2010. But the 2010 flood was 2 massive rain events that are back to back. 7 inches one day, 7 inches another day. And the flooding was tremendous. So there was a tremendous amount of debris all over so many waterways around the region. It was a massive effort over 3 years. And these stats here are really mostly what our organization did, but we created the structure, Cumberland River Compact, Hands on Nashville, a number of organizations. We tackled so many different sites. It took a while to even figure out where they all were. And certain counties that were more remote needed more assistance. It was a tremendous amount of effort. And as Mikhail pointed out, there are several things that came out of that effort too, which is all these communities getting smarter about letting people know how to know which waterway to watch and where, so you're not driving into floodwaters. There's also, we'll get to that in a minute. Also, if you may know about us, because we have done some litigation over the years, but our area of expertise in clean water is a lot about reviewing permits, as well as helping shape regulatory structures and working with this environmental agencies like the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. As a result of a lot of our efforts and what we'll be leading, one of our priorities is in nutrient pollution, which I'll show you in a minute. It's like taking too many vitamins for rivers. So the sewer plants on the Harpeth have been reducing their amount of input to the river in terms of phosphorus and nitrogen. And I'll get to why that's a big deal, because 20 years ago, we were working with, everyone was dealing with sewer plants, sort of doing the basics and removing. But what's happening now is we're learning, all of us are learning more about making sure that waterways do not have hazardous algae blooms. And that means we have to get to the next level of understanding about the science of waterways. And that means the processing and the treatment systems of all our sewer plants are all upgrading across the state. And what the city of Franklin is doing is a really good example. Part of that came out of our efforts and our litigation. And as I was mentioning, we actually deal a fair amount with recreational management. The Harpeth River State Park area, 500,000 people visit that thing a year, if not more now. We have signs, if you live on a waterway, be river responsible. You'd be amazed what people think they can do when they decide it's time to ride somebody's horses along the river. And even though all of us, no one wants to see filth or dirt and trash in our waterways, the big challenge is how's it getting there? So I think some of us are spending even more time now trying to reduce the amount of waste that's being generated. It ends up in our waterways because of stormwater and poor practices in that way. But I really don't want to have to keep doing cleanups. And I'm sure Mikhail doesn't either. So let's figure out the reasons why it's happening. And a lot of these will be poor trash management and old areas of, like, the dumpster out back behind the mall that's down the floodway. So here are so we actually, believe it or not, I'm the one who helped write the permits across the state. I was working with TSRA and TDEC on how to do hand-built access points, so that this is the one on the Harpeth River and the Lowhead Dam site in Franklin. The TSRA and others have been building them in different areas across the state. Not everywhere, but we're trying to have safe access points for people so they're also not trespassing. So two of our three core areas for us coming up, and for everybody, I'm sure for a lot of you, is growth. A lot of our growth is on converting land. I saw the chat about Bell's Bend, the importance of maintaining agriculture. So we are moving more into finding ways that communities can incentivize, if you will, make it an equal financial choice to maintain a farm in some fashion and produce or do something else with it besides sell it for high density development. That's something that we're very interested in working on and looking for examples in other states, and they're out there. And so we don't have them happening in Tennessee yet. And that's probably the next important thing, to blend in with development standards and things like that. One of the other things that goes on with growth is that people do pee and poo, right? They need drinking water. And most of people are aware of growth stress because of traffic, right? Potholes, crowding in schools. But when we have, and a lot of us learned this 15 years ago during the big drought, we discovered a lot of the drinking water systems they weren't well connected with each other. They were more fiefdoms. And so, and most of the water was coming from the Cumberland anyway, being processed there, being delivered through these different rural drinking water systems. So these extreme weather events have really highlighted some of the rural infrastructure that needed upgrading, as well as management of drinking water and sewer. And here's an example of what happens this time of year when it rains a lot. And this is a huge project that, for example, Metro's doing. They've been doing it for 20 years, 15 years. We did a great presentation with them recently. We want more people aware that of what you can do to sort of prevent this problem, which is sewer overflows. It rains, gets into the sewer lines, and then the rain and the sewage is coming out of the manholes. It doesn't make it to the sewer plant. The other thing going on is there are different ways to do sewage treatment. It doesn't have to be a big sewer plant on a river. They have treatment systems that are basically, the last step is using land. So the soil is doing the final treatment. And we have pressure by several of the small companies that design these things to minimize the amount of oversight by the state. So we're really, literally for the past 2 years, our organization, the environmental department and others have had to deal with bills that are being proposed that the environmental agency does not have regulatory oversight over a type of sewer plant. So we need more people more aware of what's going on at the state legislative level and having relationships with their local legislators. Because essentially the power brokers in the legislature is the home builders, and having more people that our local legislators know and are interacting with, besides the folks they see on the Hill, is really a vital need. And so that's what this is about. We need people need to be more comfortable interacting with their decision makers. So if you're interested in who your state legislator is, Here's the website, capital.tn.gov, and you type in your address. There's a map for the state Senate and the state House. You don't have to go down to the legislature to get to know them. Look them up, and then everybody, if they're an elected official, they're hosting local gatherings, or the local chambers having one with them there, meet and greet sessions and discussions. Go and get familiar with who these folks are, shake their hands, get to know them. You may not talk to them for a year and a half, and you may want to develop a relationship before you're like hitting them with, hey, I'm worried about such and such a bill. But truly, legislators and elected officials want to hear from their constituents, and they don't hear from enough people. And we're not talking about signing on one of those electronic, those petitions. That's one thing, but it doesn't do a whole lot. The relationship is what matters. And because we have such low voter turnout, especially at local elections, most of the public most citizens are not engaged in what's happening at the local level or the state level. And that's where most of the decisions are made that are affecting your property rights and your daily lives. I know we get really whipped up and want to know who the next president is, but all the key decisions are happening at the local level. Probably all of the ones that really matter to most people, and then next at the state level. And I was actually having a conversation with a local planner in a small town, and she was sort of lamenting that, a lot of the citizens don't understand how planning works. And she doesn't have some, well-informed citizens that she can work with. So get to know those staff, and they're not that hard to find on the websites. It really isn't. And go walk in, take some of your friends if you're all interested, and sit down with them and say, hey, so what's coming? What's the vision for this area of town? I really wanted to stop here for a minute, because to me, this is the most important need in Tennessee, is much more interaction with elected officials and government employees who really want it. Because what we're missing with the balance of like different views and values is that we don't have the public and citizens, private sector who really know what they're talking about also involved in these discussions, very serious discussions. So one of the big priorities we are doing too is we are building a citizen water monitoring program. We are beta testing and designing it right now in the Nashville area. We were working with E. coli, but it'll expand. And what's interesting is once you start sampling for E. coli on a regular basis, pretty frequently, there's a lot more probably water quality hotspots than we realize. And then we want to be able to all figure out how to solve those problems. If you're in an urban area like Richland Creek, any area, you need to pick up your pet waste, especially at those dog parks. That's a common source of E. coli in urban areas. Even if there are sewer overflows, those are not common recurring problems. It's things like pet waste in urban areas. And here's data from Highway 100, which is the Harpeth in Nashville. We had a number of times this summer when the E. coli levels were 2 to 4 times the required standards that the state sets. So this is probably more of a frequent problem than we realize. And we're raising the funds, so we have the lab costs. We will be eventually building our own water quality lab, so that it'll be easier for us to coordinate volunteers being involved as well, so we can cover more area and than paying for all the lab costs. But I just wanted you all to know we're interested in coordinating with people around Nashville, looking for those areas that people like to recreate, like they take their dogs and their kids and they just go sit in the creek. We want to kind of go and sample those on a regular basis over the next 2 years and get a feel for what's going on. So nutrients and nutrient pollution is a big deal in waterways and rivers and lakes. Did everybody hear about the red tide in Florida and the big hazardous algae blooms in Lake Erie? Well, it used to be people didn't really worry about it too much in rivers because they felt water moved. It doesn't create the conditions. And that's turned out to be kind of a bit of a fallacy with so much more input. And ag is a big input in general, sewer plants and our own runoffs from our property. So here's the drainage of the Mississippi River Basin. It's pretty cool, isn't it? It's huge. And so look at the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is the result of all this drainage of nitrogen, phosphorus, and other pollutants. And then you have all this growth of bacteria and it dies and you're sucking the oxygen out of the water and you create truly areas of the Gulf of Mexico right in there where there's no oxygen in the water. So there are no fish. And then locally, you can get fish kills, but more importantly, what it is that you're if the system like the Harpeth and others, when you have the low flow areas or lakes or the ponds, especially farm ponds, gets hot in the summer, you have the nitrogen and phosphorus in there. It's all out of whack from the natural relationship. And so it fosters the growth of the types of algae that can make toxins. They don't always release them, but dogs tend to step and play around in the water, and they get it on their, they're getting little pieces of like green dots on their fur, and they lick it off. So they're ingesting, which is why you're seeing more pet deaths, as well as livestock deaths. So one of the things going on that we're involved in is working with Department of Ag and Department of Health in trying to find ways for the public to be more aware and provide information, so we all get a better sense of where this might be happening. Maybe we don't realize it's been happening for a while. So our science program is working with all the city of Franklin and Dixon and Metro and TWIG and the EPA. The Harpeth, here's Nashville. So the Harpeth River is the big study site for the Southeast US with a stakeholder, a bunch of different players working on how to come up with that pollution reduction plan so the whole river meets all the water quality standards. And one of our focuses is on the summertime. The river gets low. It's when everybody wants to be out there. Everybody's tubing. We do not want to have a condition where we're fostering hazardous algae blooms. And we did some quick sampling 2 summers ago, and we did find microcystin, which is one of the many different toxins. And it was dry. It gets droughty in the summer. If the drought conditions are enough, you'll have these areas that this is in a stream, but also in the Harpeth, maybe off on the side where the water's been stagnant. So you can help in many ways. If you are a cell phone geek and tech geek, or like Instagram, get your phone, download the Water Reporter app. It was designed in the Chesapeake Bay. We have a group that actually we can use all across Tennessee, but it's the Harpeth Conservancy group, but you can go anywhere you want. You can do it across the country, and you can, whenever you see a problem, you can take a picture, and then you just write in the comments what you think is the problem. We're also using it right now for reporting flood debris. Obviously there are websites, but it doesn't, just go ahead if you don't know which website to send that information to, use the Water Reporter app or take a picture and email us. We'll get it into the system as Metro and Franklin and Cheatham County and everybody and Wilson County are trying to, we need people out there finding the problem spots. And so hashtag Nashville flooding is what everybody's using. You can put that right in the app. But if you see any other pollution problems, you don't like the way something smells, take the picture and say, I don't like the way it smells. Also, even though we've been talking about sewer plants and complicated issues about nitrogen and phosphorus pollution, a lot of it's coming from suburban lawns. People are over fertilizing. So I was at a presentation a couple years ago, and the Department of Agriculture had looked at all the soil sampling data from the University Ag Extension. I don't know, do people know that you can get your soil tested? It's right there in Nashville, the Ag Extension on the campus there, blanking on Ellington Ag Center. There's the website. I pulled that up last night. It gives you the tips. You don't have to get a box. You can just take the soil, put it in a Ziploc and mail it to them. But I'll guarantee you, you don't need to use any phosphorus fertilizer if you're just trying to maintain sort of a basic lawn. You probably need lime, if anything. But if you know anything about fertilizer, they'll have some numbers on it. These are the numbers you want. The middle you want to be 0. Whoops. And here's the data from the soil samples in the Williamson County area. And it's very similar for Nashville. We just picked one county that he provided. The soils in our area are naturally high in phosphorus. You don't need to put more phosphorus on it. It's not going anywhere except into the stream. So don't waste your money. Don't pollute the creek. I wanted to bring up sewer overflows for a second again on how you can help spot them. First of all, you'll find manholes, especially in older parts of any town. They're usually running near the creeks because it's the low-lying area. If you smell something funny or you see gray, see this gray color, or you see funky things growing like that, that's a lot of bacterial growth. Something is leaking. Go ahead and use the Water Reporter app, take a picture. You may not smell anything, but this particular one happened 5 years ago in Franklin, and the person who found it was actually someone who was a plumber. So he kind of had a sense of it, and it really helped Franklin be able to get on it, and they figured out what was happening. Something was leaking out of this particular manhole. Lime is what you put down to kill the bacteria, but you can't really treat the creek. So I'm just letting you know that you should be aware of that. And if you're out there walking in a creek or see manholes with something, if you see stuff like this in the creek or it's gray, that's bacteria growing. Now, what else can you do? Don't put the flushable wipes down the toilet. Don't pour your grease down the toilet and down the drain or the toilet. But treat your sink and your pipes like they are special, because it's amazing what people clog up, and there's so much clogging. And anyway, Mikhail and I could bore you with all kinds of stories, even in London. It's really tricky. I mean, none of us are helping our infrastructure if we're treating it badly. So nothing goes in the toilet but human waste, okay? Not toys, nothing. And nothing goes down. Please don't put grease down the drain. So let's talk about the flood that we just had. And as the trivia said, it was a 24-hour period starting Saturday to early Sunday morning with 7 inches of rain. That's huge. What's also really important is that it happened, there was so much water in such a short period of time. And one thing I'm going to show in a second as I wrap up here is what's happening in our area of the country. Mikhail touched on it. Sorry, Mikhail. I've got it. One of our AmeriCorps is Michelle too, and Mikhail. So it's Friday, so I keep mixing up people's names. But people have been asking us too, and I'll show you a video of them in a minute about the flooding on the Harpeth and in downtown Franklin. I think some people who are new here are like, oh my God, there's all this water in the river, and should it happening? I don't think it should be flooding. Flooding is natural, and our rivers have natural floodplains. And until very recently, frankly, in most rural areas, you're not going to find a lot of structures in those by the creeks and in those floodplain areas. The farmers couldn't afford it, and they wouldn't have done it. They know. It's more when we have a lot of hyper engineering going on in highly urban environments where we do a lot of cut and fill, and we're trying to keep that stream or that water down in the channel, and we channelize our rivers. Then when we have a flood, we discover where the water used to go. So I would say that if you go to Boston and New York City and other places, they have a whole much bigger set of issues than Nashville does, because Nashville's a smaller city, but Nashville has areas that are just the same kind of dynamic. It's all been paved, it all had been channeled, and now we're trying to restore some of those natural flows where we can. So just to see what the stats were for the Harpeth at Hobby 100, this is a US Geological Survey gauge. I'm going to show you how to find those in a second. This was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's showing you the height going up and down. And then within 12 hours, look how fast that river's rising. It's going past action stage. These are National Weather Service terms for, okay, they like tell the emergency response people, the police, start letting people know. They put out some warnings. By the time it gets to this level, they're putting out, that's flood stage. They're giving you, it goes from flood advisory to flood warning. And so you really need to know where your creeks are at this point. And if you're, I think a lot of people want to worry about, well, I'm next to the main river, so it won't matter to me. And then they go and drive down a road into a bridge across a creek, and that's flooded out, and they think they can get across in their car, and they can't. So we have on our website, but in the Harpeth, here is Rutherford County, there's Nashville, the river flows north. There are 4 USGS gauges. Here's the website right there. I'll pull it up in a second, and they have all the dots across the country about where these gauges are. And I'll show you how to find how much water's in it. And you can put it on your phone. You can set it so it'll beep at you. You can be totally in the know, because you need to know where you live, and not if you are living on the Harpeth, and here is Davidson County, Bellevue. In this area is Coley Davis. The Harpeth River is going to flood a lot sooner than the Cumberland River. So you need to know what's going on in the Harpeth and not drive down Coley Davis Road right into the floodwaters. And that was one of the things that was happening in 2010, as the news was so focused on flooding still rising in the Cumberland River. And rivers rise at different times. The Little Creek rose and fell, but the main rivers are still going to rise. So the peak in the Harpeth River was Sunday evening, even though everyone was already talking about the flooding that night in smaller creeks. And then the Cumberland River just finished peaking, I think, yesterday. So you really have to be smart about, if you're living in this area, you got to know where your waterway is and which way it flows. And what type of source you can keep up with for, and here's the other thing. If it rains more than half an inch, your lawn is now a parking lot. The soil here is so clayey, it cannot, if it doesn't have a whole bunch of trees and vegetation, if it's mostly lawn or a couple of trees, shade trees, your property just can't absorb that much water. So after about half an inch, it'll start to pond and it'll start to flow. So we all have a lot we can do with our property to try and mitigate that. That's a fancy word. Also, I don't know if you saw the press, but there are a couple of guys in their 60s that had to be rescued on the Harpeth just on Sunday. They thought it'd be kind of cool to float the Harpeth way south of Franklin. They figured, well, it's when the river's really kind of low, but the river was 28 feet above normal height. And if you're from this area, you're kind of used to the river being kind of a low, lazy river. And then you think, well, cool, the water's up in the spring. Oh, the water's up after flood. We'll go out there and have a little bit of a whitewater experience. That is so stupid and dangerous. And then they had to be rescued. The water's moving very quickly, not to mention the fact that it's churning up all kinds of stuff that you can't see. And then all of a sudden the bottom of the log floats up or what, God knows what. Please don't get in the water. And this is Easter weekend. It's sunny. Now's not the time to get in the river right now. It's still all very, very too much flow. So let's talk for a second about climate change. And as Mikkel pointed out, there's been a tremendous amount of effort in the Nashville region. She was talking about the buyout program. Another big thing that's also been going on are rule changes, elevating new properties above the first. So your first floor has to be above floodwaters, like a foot above it. And that also means all the HVAC under your house has to be protected. So if the water rises, your house isn't damaged. There's lots of those kinds of flood rules that have been put into effect in Franklin, Williamson County, Nashville, probably other areas around here. There's a term called dry proofing and wet proofing your property. So in Browns Creek area with all of those storage units, you know how Gibson Guitars lost a lot of their material during the 2010 flood. You could rebuild in those areas if you dry proof. So if the water goes up, rises again, but your structure isn't damaged. So there's a lot of that that's come into play that's really helped. So there's not as much property damage from last weekend's flood as opposed to 2010. However, climate change is not just sea level rise. It is more intense rain events, and these storms are all getting. I think you all know that, probably most of us, but I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of how fast the rain can come, how much more is coming. And so here are the stats I just pulled. I was just looking at the NOAA website. I didn't realize this, but we've had an 18% increase in heavy rainfall events in the Southeast. So when you compare the first half of the decade, sorry, my phone's blowing up. From 1901 to 1960, you look at all the rain events, and you compare that to 1986 to 2016, it's an 18% increase. That's a big deal. It's not that we're getting more and there is more water. And so a lot of our stormwater regulations are designed and based on, okay, there's a rain event of a certain amount and then it's going to be dry for 3 days. We have to make some assumptions. So the retention ponds and all that are designed on mostly what you would call normal conditions, but we're seeing that it's changing. And so we may have to adjust our designs and requirements again, because we're getting more rain in a shorter period of time. So here's a shot from, here's a really cool thing. Do you see this map? And I will show you the website. It's called floodfactor.com. And the same article that Mikkel was pointing out, there's been articles in the New York Times. The Tennesseans run some great stories because of this area of the country really needs to think about flooding in terms of rain. So they have put together probabilities that include climate change predictions. Unfortunately, the work that FEMA does and everything else looks at historical data. So they aren't, I think they're legally not allowed still to actually build some things based on predictions of the future. There might be someone here in our group that might know more about that, but that's something that we're all trying to kind of get our mind around, is actually trying to design some of this so we're actually planning ahead. That would be a good thing. That's a resilient city concept. So these darker red dots are properties that are at much higher risk of flooding than these. And I picked this one because it's 7 Mile Creek. I mean, these are teeny creeks. We're not on the Cumberland here. We're not on Mill Creek even. And so here is the website. Hey, bye. Let me know if you can't see what I'm doing. I'm going to stop my share for a second. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pull up, where's my flood factor thing? All right, I gotta move this thing out of here. Go away. Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys. Okay, so here's the cool thing I wanted to show you. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay, so here is the prediction of increased rain in the next 15, 30, and 30 years. Right now, you see the dark blue? We're going to see 10% more increased intensity rain events. And I'm going to move this down. All right, so in 15 years, watch the dark blue start to expand. Do you see that? So this is what's happening across the country, is that we're going to be seeing more intense rain events. Rain is going to get heavier. So if you want to prevent flooding, we need to be on top of that. And this same website is where you go and you just literally, I put the link up and you type in your address. And mine's not going to be all that sexy because I don't live really in a flood prone area, but I'll get close to it. And it'll pull up this cool map. And I'm going to, which what I was just showing you. I did this last night because it was cool, but oh, maybe I just do this. And I just zoomed out and all of a sudden why can't it? The thing is, when you do zoom, it blocks some of the other features on your tabs and you can't see what you're doing. There it is. Okay, here's my map. All right. Now I'm near the Harpeth River in Franklin. And so what's going to happen soon is you're going to see, and Tammy, this is for you in a way, older neighborhoods did not have any of the stormwater management practices in place that you're seeing that were those built in the last 10 years. So if you live in an older neighborhood and it rains hard, you're going to experience more flooding than some of the newer neighborhoods. And so here's an example. This is not too far from downtown Franklin. This is an old neighborhood built 25 years ago. So the USGS website, where you can find your gauge, here's the map of all the little dots. And then you click on one of these, you'll see, I pulled up the map where you see the streets, you can figure out the one near you. And then it'll show you these things like, this is how high the river has gotten. This is right near downtown Franklin. It got to a moderate flood stage. It went up. It went up in less than 10 hours. It went from 7 to 30 feet. Okay, that happened in less than 24 hours. That's how quickly the Harpeth can rise. So the little Harpeth in Brentwood, where they were really having flood problems, that rose in 5 hours. Water rises very quickly. So to get back to wrap up, well, here's the Harpeth. Can you see that? This is the Harpeth at Highway 100. Here's Warner Parks is right over here. The main river channel is this going like this. This is into Bellevue, and all of this is floodwater. And that's the floodwater that is naturally there. Some of it's been altered over the years, but when you see, like Mikhail's pointing out, when you see soccer fields that are being flooded and all that, well, those recreational facilities are in the floodplain. Those are natural flood areas. And those are okay uses in the floodplain. What's not okay and what causes flood damage downriver is when you take a natural flood area, you build structures in it, you pile dirt in one place, and you don't compensate where you're going to store the water. So you shove the water downriver. That's what's been going on historically for anything that's probably built 50, 30 years ago around here. So to wrap up, can you see my PowerPoint again? Managing stormwater on your property. You can build a rain garden, and I'll be honest. See this nice rain garden? I've got several. They're never going to look that nice, not unless you're like Diane Schur and you're really good at gardening. But even if it's still lawn, you can take a low area and you can actually do things to actually make it absorb more water and hold on to it. So there's
I can't see
What's that?
We can't see your PowerPoint.
Okay, sorry about that. That's what, thanks for letting me do it again. That's why I wanted you to shout, because I'm not the best at backing and forthing. Is this better?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks guys, sorry, or gals or whatever. I'm from the Northeast, we say guys. I hope most of you know this, but it's always fun to go out on your property after when it's raining and see what your downspouts are doing, all that stuff. And see if you can find a way to make sure that they're not going straight into the street. A lot of them originally were designed to go down your driveway into the street. It's like, get it off your property. It's if you, depending on the lay of the land, see if you can take some of that and to redirect it onto your property. If you have a creek or a stream, give it a little bit of a no-mow zone. Even if it's still fescue and it's grown up in privet, you can tackle invasives later, but slowing the water down is the game, and having denser vegetation does that, and a tree canopy does that. Most of it, when we have a dense forest, most of that rain doesn't even hit the ground, and a third of it will evaporate. When we clear it all, most of that then hits the ground. So to wrap up, there's lots of ways that we actually help provide information for people, get out in the creek. We call them lessons on the river. So if you sign up on our website to our harpethconservancy.org, we send out e-blast about every 2 weeks. That's the easiest way to stay on current, as well as Facebook, Harpeth, Instagram and Twitter, obviously, and our YouTube channel. Because now what's great about all of us going to the pandemic and learning all this technology is so much of things can be recorded. You can learn, follow on, and listen later. So here's our YouTube channel. Like Come River Compact has all their river talks on there. It's enormously valuable. We have some coming up. There's one, we'll have experts, probably Roger Lindsay and some others talking about flooding on May 26th. We have these every month. April 28th is invasives versus natives. So this is a series we do on the fourth Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Please send us your topics and who you want to hear from. We have there's so many cool people out there. I mean, all of us could be hosting, and we need more and more people learning that there are these experts out there, and they can teach you so much so fast. And so even if you miss it, you can watch them on YouTube. There's the license plate. You know what? That's my best selfie. I'm terrible at taking selfies. It took a long time to get that picture, but that license plate, like special license plates, helps fund our work. And just to wrap up, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So take your time, get to know the people who make decisions. Not everybody in the community needs to be as knowledgeable as you, but you need to be someone that they can rely on, and you can then network a whole bunch of other people. And at the same time, the more that you know something and can tell other people, hey, here's some simple tips for you. You're not ready to become a flooding expert, but get this app, and that way you'll be safe. And if we have these severe storms in the dark, don't drive. And here's the app where you can, get the alerts. It's like the more that we all, as we get more knowledgeable, can tell other people and spread that word, but also work with those decision makers. It doesn't take everybody. It takes a key group of people who are constantly working together and developing those long-term relationships. That's obviously more time than you probably originally intended, but I think Mikkel and it was floodplain 101, flood lessening, flood management 101 this morning. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And I mean, obviously, any questions, as I said, I wasn't able to really see the chat. So sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Dorie. We have just time for a couple of questions, and I'll start with some of the first ones that I saw. But
yeah,
if you do have questions, just put them in the chat and we can send these to Dorie, and we can put an update on our website under past programs. We'll also have this presentation available to view later, and the recording of the Zoom. So we won't get to all questions today because we do have some TWIG announcements, but all right, to start. Is there a River Smart program for residential owners living along the river for responsible land use practices? They said similar to Lake Smart in Maine. Do we have something like that?
Mikkel, I mean, are you referring to something that like there's tons of information out there, but whether or not it's a program where you can get some money financing you, like buying plants, I don't think so, if that's what that one is. But all of our organizations and even the cities will have information on what you can do as far as plantings and basic tips for stream buffer management and things like that.
Awesome. And then, and someone later down in the chat is talking about pollinator gardens. So for whoever asked that question, check out the links that some people are putting.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many different tips, things you can do out there. Whether it becomes a pollinator garden or anything else, underlying it, it also could be a rain garden. It could be also managing some of your water on your property, because mine's kind of got multiple things going on. I keep telling Daryl Waltrip, who's my neighbor, I put up signs, pollinator garden, so he doesn't tell me to mow.
Here's another question. Do we interact with the conservation districts in Tennessee? Soil and water are so closely connected.
Yeah, so both Cumberland River Compact, our organization, Tennessee Environmental Council, and others, there are grant funds as well that our organizations can get, that then work with property owners, and property owners can get their own, farmers can get their own funds. That's what the 319 program is. But yes, they are managed through the NRCS and so forth. And also the Department of Ag and the state will have those funds as well. So like anything, it's like helping various players know how to get that money. And some of our monies will then cover some of their own expenses.
Excellent. All right, so we are running out of time, so we're going to switch over to our monthly announcements. But before I pass it off to Gracelyn, I just want to say a big thank you to Dorie. We really enjoyed your presentation. We're so glad you got to speak with us today. And as a token of our thanks, TWIG will be sending you a Tennessee cultured pearl.
That's cool.
Yeah, as a symbol of our sustainable waters, and just our thanks to you for being a monthly program speaker.
Yeah, I mean, those are one of those species where the most biodiversity on the planet is in mussels around here. So very cool.
All right, I'm passing it off to Gracelyn, our Vice President, for our TWIG morning announcements. Thank you, Gracelyn.
Of course. Thank you, Renee. And thank you, Dorie. That was amazing. That was so informative and like just so timely. So thank you so much. And I'll try to run through these pretty quickly, because I know we only have, I think we're 2 minutes over. So thank you for staying on if you can. But yeah, thanks for being here. It was a great meeting as always. It's the highlight of my month. And Dorie, I learned so much, and I think everybody else did too. So thank you for being here. Tennessee Women in Green empowers, inspires, and making it super efficient, and connects women who are committed to environmental sustainability. Huge shout out, as always, to our sponsors. We could not be here and do what we do without you all. If you are interested in becoming a sponsor, your workplaces, on our website, you can go to become a sponsor under the Get Involved tab on our homepage, and there's more information there. Thank you to our new and renewing members. Please, as always, we are here. The board, the membership is here for you to reach out to connect with. We're not able to be in person right now, hopefully soon, but we still want to have a virtual coffee with you and connect with you. That's what we're here for. Upcoming events. So tomorrow, April 3rd, Saturday, April 10th, and the 17th at 9:30 a.m. Owls Hill Nature Sanctuary is doing a group hike to look at the spring wildflowers. This is an adult-only hike, and it is $12 per person. It should be really beautiful. On Saturday, April 17th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., there is a river cleanup with the Bellevue Harpeth Chamber of Commerce. And this is where you'll pick up debris and litter. And this is a free event, but you will need to bring your own canoe or kayak or paddleboard or whatever you want to bring. But this is a socially distanced event. So on their website, you can pick time slots, and spots are limited. So jump on that.
Yeah, just to cut in, we're doing that with them as well. So they may actually end up, we're working with them on that, partly because now of the flood and some other things, we may have to retool. It might be, there'll also be more than just a float. We may need people also on the ground. Do you know what I'm saying? On the land.
Of course.
So just FYI.
Good to know. Perfect. So I'm sure the website will be updated if anything changes. But yeah, it should be a great little event and much needed. Saturday, April 24th, The Nashville Earth Day Festival is happening. It's outdoors at Centennial Park as well as virtually. There are plenty of volunteer opportunities on their website at nashvilleearthday.org. And lastly, next month's program will be with Laura Zapata, the co-founder of Clearlope, which if you haven't heard of it, it's a really impressive company. It helps with brands that want to offset their carbon footprint and expand access to clean energy with solar projects. So this will be an amazing meeting. Y'all don't miss it. And I wanted to note that TWIG will be partnering with the Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. There will be a volunteer opportunity to build raised garden beds. The date and time is TBD, so just be on the lookout for more information there. And as always, all of these events and more are on our website under community events. We are also doing a Earth Month Eco Challenge, inspired by the Drawdown Suggestions, which is a research-based organization that's leading the efforts to map, measure, model, and describe existing and amazing solutions to climate change. So join us in celebrating Earth Day all month with these virtual events. You can join our team and earn points. Should be a really great way to connect, even though virtually. We have money for y'all. So through our TWIG Seed Fund, which is our grant program, we will help pay for qualifying undertakings like course study in environmental science, attendance at sustainability conferences, seminars, albeit virtually, or in person later on this year, hopefully. So go to our website and there is an application there. So just as a note, all activities, applications must be submitted at least 30 days in advance of the proposed payment date. So just keep that in mind. T-shirts are coming soon. So these will be available close to April 10th. These are 100% cotton from a local sustainable screen printing and design company called Friendly Arctic. These are in preparation for the big payback. And we will be doing porch pickups for those that purchase a shirt. They will be $20 with, of course, 100% profits going back to support TWIG's mission and goals. So please contact marketing at TennesseeWomenInGreen.com with the size and color you would like. And these are the two colors, soft cream and citron. And most importantly, you get a free coffee for coming to this meeting. So you can go to Ugly Mugs in East Nashville, just mention TWIG, and you'll get a free coffee courtesy of Blessed Earth Southeast.
It's actually Green Interchange. It's changed.
Gotcha. I will change that. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And lastly, thank you for spending your morning with us. As always, all of our information and events and news and job postings are on our website, TennesseeWomenInGreen.com. And if you haven't already, connect with us via Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the socials, and via email. So thank you so much for being here. And I think that's it. Thanks for sticking on if you've been able to. Y'all have a great week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Dorie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great meeting.
Hey, everyone.